Good evening, everyone. We're going to be studying tonight Sichos on Parshas Acharei from Chelek Yud from the 17th volume of the Sichos, the first Sicha. So it is Avodas HaKohen Gadol B'Yom HaKippurim. Parshas Acharei discusses in detail the service of the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. So regarding the service of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, Nemar b'Parshas Acharei, it says in this week's Parsha, that the Kohen Gadol will atone for himself and for his house. V'darshu Chazal, and the rabbis interpret the word that he'll atone for himself and for his house or his household. Beisai, what does his household mean? Zu ishtoi, this refers to his wife. And from this pasuk, we learn out that the Kohen Gadol needs to be married on Yom Kippur. Now, this law that a Kohen Gadol has to be married is stated specifically with regards to Yom Kippur. However, the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol mustn't be married. Not only does he not have to be married, he's allowed to participate in the service in the Beis HaMikdash. Not only can he participate, but the contrary. He can do the choicest of services. He gets to choose what he wants to do. And nowhere does it say that throughout the year he has to be married. As it does on Yom Kippur, that he has to be married. Now, this demands explanation. On the contrary, one would think the opposite. Yom Kippur is the holiest day, the holiest service. It's the highest levels of holiness are on Yom Kippur. Both in terms of the space, both in terms of the time, and in terms of the individual who performs the service. And as we refer to it many places, what do we mean by that? The service is done in the holiest space in the world, which is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. It's done on the holiest day of the year. Right? Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Not only is it in the holiest space, in the Holy of Holies, on the holiest day of the year, but it's Vayidei Kohen Gadol. It's done through the Kohen Gadol, which is Shu Gadol Mikol HaKohanim. He is the most elevated of all of the Kohanim. V'alav Nemar, and about him it says that he was separated to be holy. That in terms of holiness, he surpasses all of the rest of the Kohanim. Like the pasuk itself testifies, the great Kohen, in other words, the Kohen Gadol, who is greater me'acha from among his brothers. Why? Because I Hashem made him holy. So Yom Kippur is associated with holiness. Usually when we think of holiness as something which is disconnected from, mundane, material, and physical things. And on this day, Yom Kippur, the holiest day, the holiest space, the holiest person, what do we say? He has to be married. The rest of the year, you don't have to be married. But on the holiest day, in the holiest space, in the holiest time, and the holiest person has to be married. Seems confusing. The question goes even further. One of the preparations which is done for the service in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur is Shivas Yamin Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mi Beisai. You know what they do to the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur? They separate him from his wife 7 days before Yom Kippur. He's not allowed to be with his wife for the 7 days before Yom Kippur. And together with this, yet at the same time, what do we say? While we're separating the Kohen Gadol from his wife for 7 days before Yom Kippur, at the same time we say, but you must be married. And you cannot be serving in the Beis HaMikdash as the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur if you're not married. Yet with that, you functionally have to be married. Sorry, you have to be technically married, but functionally we separate. Doesn't make sense. So from this, it's clear that this that we say that in Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol has to be married. This adds to the perfection and to the greatness of the Kohen Gadol that he's married. And that's why we demand that he should be married. Because obviously, it's not like he's functionally being married, right? We're separating from him from his wife. But we're saying this idea that he's married, that contributes to the service of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and that's why we say he has to be married. So v'hinei hasbara b'dina amur sha'kohen Gadol b'yom Kippurim tzarich nasi. This that we say that Kohen Gadol has to be married on Yom Kippur, efshar lomar b'shnei panim. We could explain it in two different ways. One way is why does a Kohen Gadol have to be married on Yom Kippur? It's because of the importance of the service on the day. Because the service in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur is so important. Since it's such an important service in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur, so we don't allow this service to be performed by just any regular Kohen. Not only that, we don't even let it be done by just a regular Kohen Gadol. The service on the base in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur has to be done not just by a regular Kohen, not just by a Kohen Gadol, but by a Kohen Gadol who has the added advantage of being married. That's one way of explaining it. That the purpose of the Kohen Gadol being married is because of the significance of the service being performed on the day. Another way to explain it is it's not because of the importance of the service, but it's because of the importance of the Kohen Gadol. Meaning, on this day Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol needs to be at the most elevated state because of the Kohen Gadol. In other words, because Yom Kippur. Just like we see that with regard to the Kohen Gadol, there are different levels of being a Kohen Gadol throughout the year. There's a Kohen Gadol who was the Kohen Gadol Mishuach B'Shem Mishcha. There's a Kohen Gadol who was anointed with the anointing oil. That was one status of a Kohen Gadol. He had the anointing oil, which gave him his status as Kohen Gadol. Another way to become the Kohen Gadol is Miruba Begadim. There was no anointing oil, but you put on the garments that the Kohen Gadol wear, and that, so to say, anoints you as Kohen Gadol. And similarly, there's different statuses of being the Kohen Gadol. But on Yom Kippur, because of the holiness of the day, the Kohen Gadol needs to be at the ultimate spiritual state. And what's the spiritual state that he has to be at? That he's a Kohen Gadol who's married, because somehow that adds a level of holiness to the Kohen Gadol. So it's not about the service per se, it's about the Kohen Gadol being on the most elevated status. What's the difference between which of these reasons we give? So he says, what's the difference between these two theories? He says as follows. On Yom Kippur, there's obviously the service that's done, which is unique to Yom Kippur. But then there's also the service that's done on Yom Kippur, which is part of the daily service. For example, right? Every day there's the daily offerings that are brought in the temple. Those are brought on Yom Kippur as well. They're not unique to Yom Kippur. They're daily sacrifices that also happen on Yom Kippur. Haktaras is offering the incense, which is a daily occurrence. Hatavas haneres, there's clearing away the lamps. That's also something that was done every day. So the Gama Vedas Elu Nasis Yom Kippur Idea Kohen Gadol. However, there's something unique, which was that on Yom Kippur, all of the service of the day, including those which were daily services, everything had to be done by the Kohen Gadol. Even though obviously you can't compare the daily sacrifice that took place on Yom Kippur to the daily sacrifice that took place on a regular day, the fact that this daily sacrifice is happening on Yom Kippur means that there's something to this daily sacrifice more than a regular daily sacrifice, because it's the daily sacrifice that's taking place on Yom Kippur. Like the Gemara itself says, that it's a benefit to the regular services that are being done on Yom Kippur. In other words, there's an elevated aspect to them. Nevertheless, however, even though we're saying that there's an elevation to the regular daily service that's done on Yom Kippur, but you can't compare it to the unique services that are done on Yom Kippur. Those are uniquely connected to Yom Kippur and are obviously on a holier level. So based on this differentiation between the services which are daily services that take place on Yom Kippur or the unique services to Yom Kippur, if the theory is that the reason why the Kohen Gadol has to be married is because of the importance of the services of the day, so one could say that for the services that take place on Yom Kippur that are not unique to the day, the daily services that take place on Yom Kippur, one not need to be married for those. Because the whole reason the Kohen Gadol has to be married is because of the unique service of the day. So in technically speaking, the Kohen Gadol wouldn't have to be married in order to perform the regular daily services that take place on Yom Kippur. In other words, to bring the daily sacrifice on Yom Kippur, for that, the Kohen Gadol wouldn't have to be married. He only needs to be married for the services which are unique to Yom Kippur. However, but according to the second theory, the second theory isn't that the service of the day demands an elevated Kohen Gadol. The second theory is that the day of Yom Kippur demands an elevated Kohen Gadol. So if it's the day of Yom Kippur that demands an elevated Kohen Gadol, then it's irrelevant which service of the day the Kohen Gadol is performing, whether it's a unique service to Kohen Gadol, to Yom Kippur, or just a daily service that's taking place on Yom Kippur. Since it's about the elevated Kohen Gadol, so then every part of the day has to be done by an elevated Kohen Gadol. So even the services which are not unique to Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would have to be married for those as well. Understand this differentiation? So we'll read it inside now. But according to the second theory, that the obligation stems from the fact that the Kohen Gadol has to be on an elevated state on Yom Kippur. One must say that the obligation to be married applies to all of the services, because it's not a law with regards to the service, it's a law with regard to the Kohen Gadol. He's the one doing the service throughout the whole day, so he has to be married for all the service of the day. So which of the theories is correct? She says, it seems that the Rambam says that the correct theory is the second theory, which is that it's a law in the spiritual state of the Kohen Gadol. Because what does the Rambam write? Similarly, with the rest of the services that take place on this day, for example, like the offering the incense, and clearing out the lamps, all of this must be done by a married Kohen. So you see that the Rambam specifically mentions that all of the services of the day have to be performed by a married Kohen, because it seems that the Rambam follows the theory that you have to be a married Kohen Gadol is because it's a law with regards to the Kohen Gadol and not a law with regards to the service of the day. Make sense? Okay. So that's all good and well, but we're still left with our most basic question, which is, why does the Kohen Gadol need to be married on Yom Kippur? On the contrary, we said you would think that the Kohen Gadol doesn't need to be married. This is a spiritually elevated day. What significance does his wife play in his spiritual elevation? Not only that, we already said that not only does we said that the Kohen Gadol was separated from his wife for 7 days, which means that technically part of the spiritual elevation is separating from his wife. So why does he need to be married in the first place? So we're by the Gimel, page 174. In order to explain this, the Rebbe brings a Mishnah that's going to answer this. So the Mishnah says that Yom Kippur atones for himself and for his household, and the Mishnah says Beisai, his household, Zuishte refers to his wife. Well, the obvious question is, since the explanation of household is wife, why didn't the pasuk just clearly say, if when the pasuk says that it atones for himself and for his household, and when it says household, it means his wife, why not just say that it atones for him and his wife? Why say for his household and then have the rabbis interpret the household to mean his wife? Just say wife in the first place. The rabbis usually bring a lengthy explanation to something that's written in the Torah in one word. So normally the Torah will say one word, and then the rabbis will bring a lengthy explanation on it. So you can't ask why didn't the Torah say the entire rabbinic explanation. The answer is because the Torah sometimes suffices with one word explanation that the rabbis then give a lengthy explanation to. But in this case, the rabbis also give a one-word explanation. So what's the Torah saving by not saying the rabbi's interpretation? Just say what it means, which is it means his wife, say his wife. What does it help to say his household? Since in our situation, since the rabbi's interpretation in the oral law is also a one-word answer or a one-word explanation, the Torah could have said that word originally. Instead of saying his household, just say his wife, and you would be no additional words in the Torah. We know the Torah is very precise and doesn't add words, but in this case, there'd be no addition anyway. Therefore, we must say that when the Torah says Beisai, which means his house, it must be that when the Torah says the word house, even though it means his wife, by saying the word his house, it's giving us an insight into what type of wife is necessary to be a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. I knew. It's not enough that the Kohen Gadol should just be married. It must be that on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol can't just be married. He needs to be married in a way that his wife has the advantage of being his house. What does that mean? We'll see. So in order to understand what does it mean, what's this advantage of a wife being his house? What does that mean? So in order to explain what it means when we say that a wife isn't just a wife, but she's your house, so we're going to first bring what it says in Tractate Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Miyamai, all of my days, like Karisi li'ishtei, I did not call my wife Ishti, my wife, Ulishayri shayri, or my ox, my ox. Elo li'ishti basi. He referred to his wife as his house or his home. Ulishayri sadi. And his ox he referred to as his field. Pirish Rashi. And Rashi explains the statement of Rabbi Yossi. Ishti basi. His wife was called, my wife is my home. Why? She ikar shel bayis, because his wife was the mainstay of the home. Uleshayri sadi, and his ox he referred to as his field. Shu ikar shel sada, because the ox is the mainstay of the field. The chsiv, like it says, v'rav tfuis, there was many crops b'koyach shor, as a result of the power of the ox. That's what Rabbi Yossi said. At first glance, it's difficult to understand. When you go look in Tractate Shabbos, this statement of Rabbi Yossi is brought in connection with a bunch of other statements of Rabbi Yossi that are all statements with regards to hidurim, things that Rabbi Yossi would do as an extra stringency in Jewish law. And therefore, all of those statements have one binding theme. What's the significance? What's the hidur, which means what's the beautification of a mitzvah? In what way is this a act of, a mitzvah in any way, or a stringency in any way, by calling your wife your house and by calling your ox your field? And the other parts that are discussed over there are stringencies that Rabbi Yossi took upon himself. What is this? It's a nice idea, but what does it have to do with the thing? What's the connection? How does this show on Rabbi Yossi being a person who's careful to do things in a more careful manner? It's about Birubasa. The explanation the Rebbe says about Rabbi Yossi is as follows. This statement of Rabbi Yossi brings about and brings out an important message in terms of his service in this world, which is this statement of Rabbi Yossi signifies his overall outlook on creation. That's a bold statement. Rabbi Yossi says, I call my wife my house, and with this the Rebbe says that in that statement is Rabbi Yossi's entire theme and purpose of creation. What does that mean? Rabbi Yossi didn't just know that there is an owner to this world. There's a creator. Rabbi Yossi didn't just know that everything that God created, he created for his glory. Ella, more than that. In everything, Rabbi Yossi only saw the purpose of the creation. So, for example, you have a cup. Okay? Right here's a cup. What's the function and purpose of the cup? The function and purpose of the cup is in order to be able to drink from. So for Rabbi Yossi, if that's the function and purpose of it, that's all he cared about. What's the purpose and function? He didn't get caught up with any of the trimmings of any creation. Everything he was laser focused on, what is the purpose of this? Therefore, when Rabbi Yossi referred to things, he didn't refer to them necessarily by the name that other people call them. He referred to them as he sees them as their purpose. And therefore, he didn't call his wife my wife. Why? Because he didn't see the role of his wife as a wife. What did he see the role as? What did he see his wife as? He saw his wife as, what's the purpose of a wife? To build a home. So that's what he called his wife, a home, because that's what the purpose is. He didn't say, "Oh, I have a wife. Why? Oh, I found a woman that I was attracted, that I like." That's not what he saw. He saw, what's the purpose of marriage? Oh, to build a home. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's all he sees. Since the whole purpose of marriage in the first place is the purpose that comes out of it, which is which ultimately is in order to fulfill the mitzvah, be fruitful and multiply, to build a home, to build a Jewish home, which is an outcome of marriage. Therefore, in the first step, when he gets married, what does he think of his wife as? He doesn't say, "Oh, there's marriage, and then after marriage comes having children and separating between the two." No, Rabbi Yossi says, "What's the purpose of marriage? To build a home." So that's what marriage is. A marriage is a home. What's a wife? A wife is a home. Al derech bir harishonim. In fact, the rabbis, the rishonim, say al hashayla. There's a famous question. Why is it when it comes to marriage, there's no blessing that the husband makes when he gets married? It's a mitzvah to get married. Every mitzvah that we do, before we do the mitzvah, we make a bracha. Every mitzvah. Yet when it comes to marriage, the husband does not make a bracha before he gets married, right? Like we have with other mitzvahs. And there's many reasons given why. And one of them is one of the answers given is that the reason why you don't make a bracha on getting married is because marriage itself is a preparation for another mitzvah, which is to build a home, to have children. And since this mitzvah is merely a preparation for a future mitzvah, therefore you don't make a bracha on this part of the mitzvah because this isn't the fulfillment of the mitzvah. The fulfillment of the mitzvah is later when you build a home. So the kach in this way, Rabbi Yossi was distinct and different from the rest of his colleagues. With regard to the other Tanoim, the other rabbis of the Mishnah, there were times when they called their wife, my wife. That's what they saw. They saw a wife. They saw their wife as a wife, without seeing her strictly as the ultimate purpose of marriage, of building a home. And don't think that the other rabbis are somehow doing something wrong. This is a path within Torah as well. To find significance in marriage itself, not just in terms of its ultimate purpose of building a home and having children. There is purpose within marriage itself. How do we know that? Like we see that the Torah itself says that a man the first year after he gets married should be available in his home throughout the whole year. Like we see that the law is when the Jews go to war, right? If it's a voluntary war, that not everybody has to participate in the war. One of those is a man who just got married. He should be available the first year of marriage to be home so he doesn't go to war, right? That way he can bring joy to his wife. At the beginning of marriage, and obviously if he just got married, he doesn't have children yet. And yet the Torah says that he's allowed to be home in order to bring joy to his wife, because the Torah is saying that there is value in a marriage itself, independent of its ultimate purpose of building a home. Similarly, we see that it's not just a mitzvah to bring joy to your wife just in the first year of marriage. Throughout the year, we see that there's a mitzvah to do this. Like we see that a husband is sometimes a husband is able to, because a husband is involved in this mitzvah, that makes him unavailable to do another mitzvah. We also know that it says that a man and woman merit that the divine presence rests upon them. In other words, in marriage itself. And similarly, we see that there's significance within marriage itself brought down in Torah. So the rest of Rabbi Yossi's colleagues who refer to their wife as a wife, it's not that they somehow are, are missing the point. The Torah sees value in a wife as a wife, like we see. But there's something unique about Rabbi Yossi. I love Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yossi was a unique Tana. He was unique in that he had a different path in life. His whole path in life was Rabbi Yossi was a person focused always on what's the ultimate purpose of this. He only sees things for the ultimate purpose. You have even in life, you have people like that, you ask a person, what kind of car do you like? Right? So some people say, what kind of car do I like? I like a car that gets me from point A to point B. That's the function of a car, right? A car is about getting me from point A to point B. So that's all that matters to me. I'm not concerned with the trimmings of the car. I don't care what company the car is. Why? Because I'm laser focused on one thing. All I care about is I have to get to that place. The only way I can get there is with a car. So that's what a car is. A car is a function of getting from point A to point B. Other people say, no, a car is a car. So therefore, what kind of car do I want? I want a nice car. And I want a car that has lots of other advantages to it. Hold on one second. Yossi is only focused on ultimate purpose. And therefore, the ultimate purpose of marriage is to build a home, to build a Jewish home, to have children. And therefore, even though the Torah does give significance, and like the other rabbis themselves did, which was referred to their wife as a wife, but for Rabbi Yossi, all he was focused on was the ultimate purpose. And therefore, all Rabbi Yossi saw was, what is the ultimate purpose of marriage? To build a home. So that's what my wife is. My wife is my home. And therefore, he refers to his wife as my home. He gives an example of this. Maimar Razal, famous statement of the rabbis, who is a wise person? One who sees the future. So what's the simple interpretation of this? What does it mean to be wise? A wise person sees, what's the outcome? What's the result? What's this going to lead to? A wise person sees what's happening now, and he already sees the future. What's this going to lead to? So he understands what's coming from the future. What he says, it's very specific. You look at what the rabbis said. The rabbis didn't say who's a wise person, someone who knows the future. What did they say? Someone who sees the future. Why sees? Maybe it should say someone who understands the future, someone who knows the future. Why does it say someone who sees the future? It says, because seeing is much stronger than just knowing. The wise person sees the future in the same way that the regular folk are seeing the here and now. He sees the future with the same clarity and certainty that the average person's seeing what's standing in front of them right now. Since we know that you can't compare hearing something to seeing something, when you see something, you're much more certain about it. Even when the thing that you're hearing is true, and it even has an impact on you. Like we see about Yisrael. What does it say about Yisrael? Yisrael heard about the miracles that God performed for the Jewish people, and the hearing about the miracles had an impact on him. But what impact did it have on him? It had an impact that he came. Yisrael had to come and see with his own eyes. Why wasn't it enough that he heard the miracles? If he heard the miracles, become a believer right where you are. No. He had to come and see it with his own eyes. Why? Because seeing is not the same as hearing. Like the expression, seeing is believing. Once you've seen something, you know it. So this is what it means when it says about the wise person, that the power of his mind when he hears something is so strong. And that's what we say about a wise person, that when a wise person understands what's coming in the future, it's not he understands the future. He sees it as clear as the people seeing what's actually in front of their eyes right now. So this is what we can explain now with regards to Rabbi Yossi. It says, Miyamai, all of my days like Karisi, right? I didn't call my wife, but I called her my house. But take if lachar mamari, it comes immediately following another statement that Rabbi Yossi said, which is Chameis be'ilois be'aldi. It says that he had 5 times that he was intimate. And he planted 5 trees in Israel. Key. Why do these 2 statements come one after another? Because one gives you a window into the second statement, which is Rabbi Yossi says that he was intimate 5 times, and each one of them planted a tree in Israel, meaning he was intimate 5 times and he had 5 children. Why? Because for Rabbi Yossi, what's the purpose of intimacy? The purpose of intimacy is to have children. And therefore, these two statements are brought one after other. Rabbi Yossi said, I was intimate 5 times and I had 5 children. And then it says, I never called my wife, I called my wife, my house. Why? Because those two statements are connected. Rabbi Yossi sees marriage, he sees intimacy, he sees a wife as its ultimate purpose, which is having children, building a home. And therefore, these two statements come one after the other. And therefore, he says the first statement about planting 5 trees, and then right after it says, Miyamai, I never called my wife, I called her my home. He always saw everything in life for its ultimate purpose. That's what Rabbi Yossi was. We see people like that. They never get stuck on everything, but what's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate purpose? Now, this doesn't mean that there isn't another path. The fact that the other rabbis didn't do it means that even within Torah, there's another path in life, which is that the journey is also part of the service. In a certain sense, it can be explained the difference between Rabbi Yossi and the other Chacham. Rabbi Yossi is always focused on what's the ultimate purpose. And the ultimate purpose is to build a home. To Rabbi Yossi, the process to the ultimate purpose isn't important. The process is merely in order to fulfill the ultimate goal. The other rabbis said, every step of the way is part of the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose surely is to have children and build a home, but every moment of life, every part of life is part of the process. How do you know this? God wanted us to have children, right? If the ultimate purpose is to have children, God could have had us have children in another way. The fact that the way to have children is through marriage between a husband and wife means that that is also significant. It's not just the ultimate purpose of having a child, because if the ultimate purpose is having a child, then why the need for marriage in order to have the child? Just have a child without marriage. If the ultimate purpose is to have a child, so then just have children. Why did God make it such that in order to have children, one has to be married to a woman for that? That means that there is a specific importance to the process of how the ultimate purpose is happening. Now, if the process itself is important, then how the process happens is important. So therefore, if the process is through marriage, then marriage has to be done in the ultimate way. Rabbi Yossi's marriage was insignificant. The rest of the rabbis said, no, the marriage also is part of the process. It's not the ultimate goal. It's true. The ultimate goal is to have children and build a home. But the fact that God said that in order to have a child, it's through this process means that this process is specific. So therefore, the process also has to be done in the ultimate manner. It's like if you're going to have a cup, right? So there's 2 ways to have a cup. One is a cup. I need to have a cup. So anything that can hold water, a drink, you use. Or no, I'm going to have a nice cup, because once I'm having a cup, it's going to be a cup that beautifies my home. It's going to be a cup that adds to my life. Not just since I need a cup, so I'm going to have a cup that I can drink out of. No, once the cup is now important in life in order to drink, then the cup is now part of the process. I want to have a nice cup. I want a cup that adds to my home, not just I need to be able to drink water. So therefore, give me whatever can work. Once it's there, once it's been created as the process, then the process becomes important. But Rabbi Yossi was a person, a Tana, who was laser focused on one thing, which is what is the ultimate purpose. Now we can explain, based on this explanation about Rabbi Yossi, we can explain why the Torah. We asked the question. We said, why did the Torah say that on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol atones for himself and for his house? And then the rabbis explain his house to mean his wife. So we said, just say his wife. Why say his house? This is why the Torah specifically says atone for his wife and not, for his house and not for his wife. To point out, On Yom Kippur, a Kohen Gadol has to be at the level that how does he see his wife? As his home. In other words, in Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol needs to be in a state of mind like Rabbi Yossi. That's the avodah of Yom Kippur. The avodah of Yom Kippur is that a Kohen Gadol has to be like the avodah of Rabbi Yossi, which is focused on what is the ultimate purpose. Since the law that the Kohen Gadol has to be married on Yom Kippur is not just a random obligation. But this law signifies the ultimate elevated state of the Kohen Gadol, which is that his home is his wife. This again proves that this is not a law with regards to the service of the day. It's significant to not since the holiness of this service, therefore he has to be married. It's because the Kohen Gadol has to be on a certain spiritual state on that day. And what spiritual state is it on that day? The Kohen Gadol has to be on a spiritual level that he's focused, like Rabbi Yossi, only on ultimate purpose. And this is something specifically unique to Yom Kippur. That in Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol has to be at a spiritual state of focused only on what's the ultimate. Okay, so there's a whole nother half of the Sicha, but we're not going to have time to go over that part now. And it's a second part of the Sicha, which connects this idea with an additional part in another tractate. But we'll end here with this. We completed one entire idea on something from our parsha about Acharei, about why the Kohen Gadol. It doesn't say that he atones for his wife, but it specifically says for his house. And that's because on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol has to be at a spiritual state that he sees everything for its ultimate purpose, like Rabbi Yossi. That's the spiritual elevation of a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, is that he sees everything for its ultimate purpose. And therefore, on the contrary, this makes sense now. The Kohen Gadol we said the Kohen Gadol has to be married, but at the same time, we said that he separates from his wife for 7 days. They go together, right? Because this is not a focus on that he needs to be married and living with his wife. The focus is on the contrary. It makes sense. He has to be married and yet he's separated from his wife. Why? Because the Kohen Gadol's focus of the year is what's the ultimate purpose of every mitzvah, of everything in life. The ultimate purpose of everything, like Rabbi Yossi taught us, which is only focus on what's the ultimate goal of it. And that's why the Torah doesn't say that it atones for his wife. It says it atones for his house, because the spiritual state of the Kohen Gadol on this day is that he sees everything for its ultimate purpose. Any questions? Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.